Hey folks, it's Bear Gardener, and I am here with a special bonus video for those of you who have been following the King's Cup 2, and if you hadn't, you should be. Just all the links will be down below, or my links down below, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on an intro because that was earlier. What is cool is that I have managed to convince one of the players who will be in the final of the King's Cup 2. Small spoiler, but if you're watching this, you probably not know that already. Baron von Glower has actually deigned to come and talk to me about this tournament. So before we do anything else, I'm going to let him introduce himself, give you a little bit of a history of Baron von Glower and cards.
Hello everyone, I'm Baron von Glower. I started playing cards 2.5 years ago now, I think. Since then I've pretty much from the start played competitively, played in a lot of OCC qualifiers, made 3 OCCs. The best result was second, and I reached an ultimate, which is pretty cool. And now I'm in the King's Cups finals.
Yeah, and I have to say, in a very impressive fashion, in the sense that you've definitely, well, I mean, in fairness, all 4 of the players who've taken part have kind of been through the mill. It's certainly been dramatic. We have not seen any kind of quick rolls or speedy finishes. We have seen like a couple of them that didn't. I mean, the first 2 were brutal. Like the best of 7 format going to 4-3, the 2 first sets in a row was kind of immense. I mean, I suppose one of the big questions, at least for me, is how different does it feel in a positive, negative, or just indifferent way, being in such a wild format? I mean, J King's got best of 7s going, which is, at least in my experience, one of the more grueling and leveling playing fields in any form of card gaming, whether physical or digital. And of course, you've got rotating deck building rules every week.
Yeah, the best of 7s, they were new to me as well. It's rough. It's I'm a player. I even in best of 3s or best of 5s, I struggle with keeping up my attention until the end. So best of 7 is a whole different. Yeah, it's a whole different animal. I mean, the rotating deck building is really fun. That's actually what made me even do the tournament, because I love deck building. So that's actually more of a positive to me and not so much a tedious thing. I like different, like, say, ever-changing kind of environments a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think J King and I both mentioned on cast that you are definitely one of the more creative deck builders in the game, and I think probably also one of the biggest theory crafters, at least that I've ever met. I'm not sure I've ever known you not have some idea mulling quietly in a corner, but I have to say, it's been interesting because I think it's fair to say that you've probably brought some of the wilder lists that we've seen. Certainly being up for bringing some OTK lists to a competition like this takes it. I wonder, like, is there a specific mindset that leads you to the way that you kind of balance out your set of 5 decks for a competition like this?
It's nothing I really have a formulated plan for. The way I did it, like in these rounds now, was just I made like a few decks I really enjoy first, and just kind of built around them. So I kind of take away all the cards that I really, really want to play, in the context I want to play them in, and then just kind of fill out the rest. I'm not someone who puts a lot of thought into, at least not in this format. In OCCs it's different, but in these kinds of formats, it's just like, I don't really make a plan of, oh yeah, I'm going to take these and these decks because I'm going to beat that sort of lineup. I don't like doing that very much. I mostly just play around what I like.
You see, now I've got to say, because I do a lot of content for newer players, as you know, I think that is something that I really want to see kind of people take home from this conversation is, like, the idea that you don't, like, competitively doesn't always have to be about playing the thing or the meta, as long as you're comfortable on what you're playing. And I think you've proven that.
Totally, yeah.
I think you've proven that to the surprise of a few people. So I think let's talk about, first of all, your first kind of set and how you felt that went, because that was, as you just said, that's your first experience best of sevening this. So from your point of view, how did that feel? Your opponent, the decks.
I was in that was first one was the classic mode, right, against Kill Switch. Yeah.
It was indeed, yeah.
Yeah, that felt. Yeah, I felt great going to that one because I've been playing so much classic mode. I've been playing more classic mode than ladder. I hadn't been playing ladder for the past few months, right? What I did do is I hopped into classic mode and been playing around there a lot. So I felt right at home there. I liked the decks I was bringing. Could basically bring almost bring kind of my all-time favorite decks.
I know
so
Thanatron did describe one of the decks as basically the soul of Baron von Glower, which I quite liked.
Yeah, the Siberian transfer. That's my first love. I wouldn't even. I don't know. I didn't even pick it as my favorite deck in the tournament thing, just because it's a bit played out at this point, But I do love the deck a lot.
I mean, sometimes that's a thing, though, isn't it? Just playing something we really enjoy. I certainly have some jank. I mean, I have the world's longest walk to a Saruga OTK in the form of a self-credit denial deck that then rotates through everything to pull off. I could do it a million better ways, but for some reason I just like the way it plays when I want to play a casual game.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's worth so much, honestly. And to get back at what you said before, with the new players taking away something from this, it's really a bit overrated in having to play quote-unquote good decks. You like to reach Field Marshal, you can, as long as you know what you're doing, like halfway, you can reach Field Marshal with whatever deck you like, really. You just got to put in the work into understanding what you're doing and how you want to win with your deck and all that. But you can get really creative when you start out playing the game. I mean, obviously, you got to follow some basic rules. Like, you got to have a win condition, you got to have enough card draw, and so on. But as long as you have a clear plan to win games, you can go on with some really wild stuff, honestly.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's one of the reasons that you can see my deck building video if you go check out my lists. But I mean, it's one of the reasons that I just did the basic deck building rules as opposed to.
Yeah, I really like that about it. Yeah.
It doesn't, as long as you follow the basic guidelines and you have a rough idea what you're doing, Field Marshal is definitely attainable. Competitive play also, I think, and you can probably speak to this from your experience in King's Cup too, is I think something you have to really want to do, because otherwise it is, at least for me, I get asked all the time, am I ever going to compete? And the answer remains the same. No, because I don't have the time, but even if I did, I don't currently have that desire, and I think that's part of it. I mean, I suppose it kind of goes to you saying that you weren't necessarily that active on ladder, but then J King kind of ropes you back in with King's Cup and a different format.
Yeah, it's, well, I don't know, playing competitively, it's you can do that in a fun way, but the more fun your approach is, usually the more time you have to put into it. Because it is just easy. Like, I'm not going to pretend and say, like, all of these top 38s I made, I did it with fun decks. No, definitely not. Like, most of it was just pretty air spamming so I could play fun decks in the qualifiers. So that's about that. Competitive playing is fun. If there was more tournaments that weren't tied to placing well on ladder, probably wouldn't have taken a competitive break. But, it's just stress as well, right? And then you have to deal with just having played until qualifiers all month, then you go out in round one. I guess that's not possible in new format anymore, but still, like, working up to that and then losing just feels so bad.
Yeah,
sometimes you just don't need that in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even in Swiss, you still get that issue where you can just end up getting on a run, and I know some players do just step back and just step out because I just don't want to keep playing because I know I'm not going to get through.
Yeah.
And ladder is, I mean, I understand. We all understand why in a digital game it exists, to bring the ability for everyone to at least have a try at it. But it is one of the most grueling, time-consuming, and sometimes soul-destroying things that you ever have to go through.
Yeah, it's like I mean, you gotta have your soul destroyed to become a regular. It's you just gotta kind of get numb to it. That's what I always say.
No, I mean, I think that's very fair. I think that's something that I've said before, and I know J. King said before about competitive play, which is to a certain extent, you are signing up to say, I am prepared to play decks I don't like into metas I don't like for
Exactly.
periods of time that are intensely long and tilting and irritating, because as long as I can hit a 60-65% win rate, then if I keep at it, I'll get to where I want to get to, and then maybe I'll get to a tournament format where I can play something I enjoy. But
Yeah.
yeah, it can be a killer.
Yeah, and right now, what also contributes for me personally is I just don't like the meta that much right now. So even if I played something I don't like into quals now, I'd have to play decks and quals I don't like. So I'll wait it out until there's something fun around again.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. I think that has to be part of the sanity of this. And I think this is why it's great to see J. King and throwing up a different tournament format. Now, obviously, this is an invitational, so there are only 4 players in it, and that's just a logistical thing. But what did it feel like when you kind of found out the final lineup? Because I mean, we are talking about 4 very, very good players. I mean, you guys are all picked from, I will say it, you are picked from the elite in this game. That's a statement of fact with your records.
Yeah, I mean I didn't expect any less from J. King, honestly. Yeah, I mean it's all players I know more or less. Played against obviously a bunch in tournaments before, so you know how good they are. Even without having played against them, you'll know how good they are just by their records. So I was a bit scared that for the majority, I think all 3 of them really just kind of are a bit more sane in their deck building, and a bit more so they don't like bring the real wacky stuff usually. So I was like, oh god, I'm just gonna have to play into all these objectively actually good decks with my stupid decks. But I guess the formats that kind of force them out of their comfort zones as well, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, on the format, I personally obviously have said loads about how much I enjoy it, but in particular, I've called out several times that I think one of the critical things in this is you can only run a card in one deck, no matter how much you want to fiddle around copies with it.
It's
That
so
must
rough.
have been wild. I can only imagine trying
Yeah,
to deck build.
it's so bad. It's especially to get a little peek into my preparation for the finals in standard. It's absolute hell. It's it's and I feel like I have a bit of a not an advantage, but it's a bit easier for me just because I play a lot of wacky stuff, right? So I got, oh yeah, I can use that card that usually isn't played in any deck, and use up slots that way. If
Yeah, I
you're
think
kind of
that's
out of it and you're just trying to, and all you're playing is like German mid range and frontline and Jagro, then it gets really rough because you can only really build one out of these 3 decks, um, in a good way at least.
No, I agree. I mean, one of the first things I did is I went and looked, because I'm the kind of person who organises my deck lists in my client based on what I'm using them for, and I went and looked at like my top 5 decks that I would actually consider laddering on, and was like, oh my, the number of overlaps where I'm just running the
It's
same
crazy.
card in
Yeah.
3 decks. And that's that. I mean, that's
Yeah, it's
very
really
cool.
bad right now. Yeah.
It's particularly at the minute, yes. Although we're not going to get into a huge meta discussion, but I will say that
Yeah. Yeah.
there are a lot of kind of auto includes and big staples at the minute that I think you kind of look at it and you go, how many different decks can I fit like a 35T and some 738
Yeah.
Jaeger into? But what does it feel like, kind of, I guess, knowing that you had, so for those who haven't followed, your first 2 sets went the full distance. So
Regrettably, they did. Yes.
in both classic mode and then in pauper, and we're definitely going to talk about that because you know how much I love pauper.
Oh yeah.
You
That
actually
was fun.
ran 7, and that has got to be both exhausting but also exhilarating, because you know you're going to see pretty much everything. Did you, with pauper, was that like for me, I obviously I look at Pauper, and because I do a lot of new player content, I'm fairly familiar with using cheaper cards. But I can only imagine if you've been rolling a lot of competitive play, that restriction, I can imagine, could feel terribly, terribly difficult to work around. But you guys seem to come up with some pretty solid interactions.
Yeah, I had some previous Pauper experience. I've played in both of the 1939 special operations. So I did have a bunch of Pauper prep. I mean, that was a year ago now or something, right? So it wasn't fresh in my mind. But having put in the work before, you kind of know what's out there. Um, so I took a bunch of, pretty much most of the decks I brought to that round was stuff I'd have tried out for the Pauper tournaments before, or
That makes
played
sense.
against in the Pauper tournaments. Yeah, that was also the there was a Chinese Pauper tournament not too long ago where people could have looked for inspiration. I didn't do it, but yeah, it's I mean, you with formats like Pauper, I think what's easy for really competent players is identify cards that are just really good, and like Claim the Skies, like Spyring, Scorched Earth, California being the obvious one, and just building decks around those cards can go a really long way.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw a lot of cards that are just high value and being played for value. But I think that's also was really what was interesting to me is the difference in play tempo and style between the classic round and then going into Pauper. It, you have to be, I think, so much more aware of trade value and being able to keep board presence in Pauper
Yeah,
because
definitely.
you can't rely on the big swings.
Yeah, I mean, classic mode is just wild, right? There's a like the possibilities in classic mode of what to play is just crazy. Like you can play crazy fast decks, you can play crazy slow decks, weird combos. I mean, I think I put the spectrum of stuff pretty on display pretty well with my classic lineup. And then in Pauper, it's mostly you gotta kinda like aggro decks in Pauper are rough to build because it's so easy to get stopped in your tracks by just a big guard or something like that. And card draw for the typical aggro decks, I guess you have expansions, but then for Germany, so much of the card draw is locked behind specials,
Yeah, massively
so it
so. I
does tend
mean,
to slow down a bunch. Yeah,
yeah, the absence of things like the 22 in Germany is punishing in Pauper
yeah,
because
the
that.
MEBF, all that sort of stuff. So it's Shermans and expansions, so you can build two aggro decks around that, but then also you have the King's Cup restriction, right, with the one card per deck thing. It gets really tight in Pauper.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was interesting to see the different variations in nations as well, which I think also goes to how restrictive that list is. So I mean, so far you guys have played Classic, you've played Pauper, and then we're going to get to the one that I think is freshest in people's mind, but also it may be freshest in your mind, and I know I'm going to kind of be putting you on the spot, but you know I'm going to go there because that's kind of the thing. And you know, if you're watching this and wondering if I'm being a bit brutal with asking hard questions in a minute, we've known each other for a while, and it's all meant in an interesting kind of analysis of competition. But for me, as a student of the mind game in cards, and big spoilers, if you have not watched Baron set against Bubbles in odds and evens, pause this, go watch that, then come back, and
Don't watch it. Don't watch it.
you will have the context for this discussion. But the mental strain that you must have gone through in that, I have been that player in long set games where I have gone down early. But like, talk us through what that felt like and the process of kind of working through that, because it did, let's be fair, it didn't go your way early.
Yeah, it was terrifying. First game, I was on Fridair against Jagro. I think I was happy about the matchup. Then I think I didn't get a one drop, or I wasn't too happy with how I drew that game. But it was just kind of it was a back and forth. It was happens losing these kind of games. And then I was like, all right, that's okay. And then second game, I really didn't expect him to bring Soviets. like I was sure, okay, I'm gonna play that German Brit deck that should be somewhat okay against his air, or against like the I forgot what he brought, but against his faster decks it should be alright. And then he snagged the win on his Soviet deck on that, which was terrifying to me because I was really hoping to catch the Soviet another time with something other than that.
Yeah, I can feel
So
that.
from that moment on, I knew it was good. It was gonna be a rough one, and I already looked at like at that point I kind of really lost confidence in my lineup because from that point on the matchups just got pretty bad, and I was like, yeah, I should probably hope to get the Air versus Heinz lineup at some point, and I knew I would get that right like eventually.
Yeah, you know it's
So
coming, but that you
yeah,
don't
so
want.
I was confident in that, and I mean, the Jet. I was a bit disappointed with my German deck into the Jets, honestly, but it was like looking back at it, the German list kind of sucked. Not gonna lie, it was not good, and I wish I brought Jet, but even I also wish I just kind of built the deck differently. Honestly, I just
Yeah,
was completely lost confidence in that pretty early on.
I mean, I can feel that, and I think I know I called it out on cast that it was particularly interesting to me at that point. Bubbles' choice between his two remaining lists was going to tell us a lot about what his mindset was, and when he rammed out Jet, you could tell that he was feeling the vibe, and we all know, at least those of us who know him, know that Bubbles likes to get inside your head a little bit too, and he's going to know that
Yeah,
those previous games are going to have been a little tilting, and one good run on Jet sets him up. But then we're set up for the biggest game 4 we have seen in the entire King's Cup, because at this point you are
yeah.
3-0 down. You're looking down the barrel of a straight sweep that would see you quite possibly out of contention, and the pressure, of course, is there because you only need one win to punch your
Yeah.
ticket into the final. You don't need to win this set, you just need to win one game. But what is it? You guys didn't have a lot of time to clear your head, but was there anything that you kind of went through or thought of or used as a process to kind of get yourself in that right
Uh,
mindset?
I mean, that kind of started with the once I realized I was losing the game against the Jets. I was just like, all right, let's just kind of think about what I'm doing. But it was pretty clear that I mean, I think it even started when I saw he picked Soviets in that second game. I was like, all right, this is gonna be rough. I'll probably have to win air against Heinz. That was the first time I thought that in the second game. So I was pretty
Nice.
set on how it's gonna go, right? So I was just gonna be pretty hoping to snag a win, somehow, but I was not expecting it. I knew my decks were probably gonna lose to Jet.
I mean, Jet.
I'm not sure why I didn't. I'm not sure why I didn't ban it. Honestly, I thought I thought I could beat Jet with the Japan deck if he kind of slow rolls it, and I thought I could beat Jet with the German deck, which turned out to be not the case.
I mean,
So
yeah.
I wasn't too terrified of the Jet by itself, but then yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I think also it does the deck that you did ban, like I legitimately called out that I do understand why you banned it, because it just looked like it was going to be thoroughly unpleasant to play into.
Yes,
And Jet
that's how I usually
can.
ban too.
Yeah, just the deck I don't want to play because the match is going to be unfun, as opposed to worrying too much about the tech. And I think that's something that we've seen different approaches from different players. I know Killswitch comes across as being much more switched on to what he feels are going to be the matchups that he doesn't want to see. And is kind of much more okay playing through whatever he has to play through. Um,
Yeah,
I'm, I'm I'm not 100% sure how Bubbles figures his bans. I've never quite gotten a grip on that. And I know Berto also tends to be very analytical. And hey, I may find out the answers because,
yeah.
hey, hopefully we'll interview everyone, but we're going to go for whoever's available. But yeah, I think that was there a moment where you really, I mean, you've said it yourself, was there a moment where you were sat there going, why, oh, why did I not just bring a jet deck?
Yeah, yeah, it was there. when the thing is, I never liked Jet. I didn't like it in the Jet season, and Bubbles loved the deck, right? Birdo also loved the deck. I think they got rank 1 and 2 on ladder Jet season, I think.
Yes,
So
they did. I was there in the trenches as Jet season was happening, and yeah, they both got very
I
good.
I just didn't want to do. I don't know. The thing is, I did think the German deck was a lot better at first than it turned out to be, so that was just a mistake on my part. But I did say, okay, there's this other deck I can play that's like kind of good as well. It's not like I'm like, okay, Jet's really good and there's nothing else good I can play, but I still wouldn't bring it. Like, if I didn't have an alternative, I would have brought it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought the German deck's good enough, but looking back, I should have just ran Jets. Got my win that way.
I mean, it's a thing, isn't it? But I think we all appreciate it. I certainly loved that you didn't bring Jet. I was kind of hoping someone wouldn't. I was also hoping someone would bring the So variant, and that happened too, because I was a little concerned that we're just going to see 4 people bring the archetypical German US Jet deck that we all came to know and loathe. And I say know and loathe with a very specific way. Those in chat who aren't aware, Jet season was probably my strongest season in cards. Was certainly the season I most thought about running for OCC, because I realised from my record keeping that I was running like a 75+% win rate on Jet, but I really hated playing the deck, and that was the problem.
I don't think anyone except for Birdo and Bubbles liked it. They were pretty rare with liking it. It was just so silly. Oh, it was, and it wasn't even just the Jets, right? It was just the war production into autocan and turn 1 wins or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was also that it was the season of swag turning up and people just high rolling swag onto the board, and it all just felt a little bit, oh, it's this again, and one of us is going to roll high, and beyond that. It was
absurd just how much of it there was. I've never experienced that before. Even when Credit Denial with what's it called, Supply Shortage and Critical Damage, the broken combo was out. Even then, you didn't have that many people playing it because the deck was actually kind of hard to pilot to a high win rate. But with Jets, it was just open season. It was it was so rare not to get a Jet matchup.
Yeah, I don't think I had a single session in that season where I didn't see Jet at least a couple of times. But I mean, it was deeply entertaining, deeply dramatic, and of course, you managed the 1 win. Unfortunately, you didn't then manage to sweep through to push the line. But the result of that, of course, and this is where I'm again going to get into the psychology of this, is that now you wrap up, but now you know that you've kind of got to run this back again, because now it's not going to be you and Berto, it's you and Bubbles, and it's going to be, and this is something I've never experienced, I've not tried it, so I'm fascinated to see what it's like. This is going to be no bans, best of 9. So how do you prepare yourself knowing the opponent that you've got and the format that you're seeing? Because again, this is standard, so the format is no weird things, but J King being J King couldn't leave it at that. He's leaving in place the you can't run the same card in more than 1 deck rule. So
I'm glad he left that in, honestly.
I mean, I think it is the defining rule of this tournament. I think it's shown that he is willing to force players out of their comfort zone. But like both psychologically and prep-wise, how do you get your head around the idea of needing to bring 5 decks and knowing you're gonna have to win on them all?
It wasn't too bad, honestly. I mean, I got 4 decks ready by now, so it came pretty easy. I don't know, it just kind of lined up well with what I like to play, not sharing that many cards in the first place. So the whole deck building aspect wasn't that much of an issue so far. I still need to test a bit and stuff, but it's even best of 9. It's rough. You can't really prepare for that. I mean, you probably could, but it's not something you feasibly want to do in your free time.
No, it's not. It's not
Just
like you're
some
gonna.
endurance training.
Yeah, you're not gonna
Yeah,
find a couple of partners and go, is anyone free to run like 3 consecutive best of 9
yeah,
sessions just to see how it
exactly.
goes? That sounds
Yeah,
like a bit of a sink into spare time, if I'm honest. But are you
yeah.
excited?
But I mean, you got the. Sorry, I'm just gonna add on to this real quick. I mean, you got the base. I mean, everyone who grinds cards ladder, who has grinded cards ladder a lot, has the ability to play hours on end. Being not 100% focused, but you gotta play to some decent level. So I
Yeah,
think like everyone in this tournament has the ability to get through it. You'll probably see some more mistakes than usual towards the end, but I think that's pretty natural. You see the same thing sometimes when you have OCCs and you have these Chinese players playing when it's like 2, 3 a.m. for them, right? Like you can't expect
yeah.
someone to be 100% switched on when you're just fatigued or tired or something. So that's probably going to happen, but I don't know. I think we're all on the same kind of base level of being able to play through that. So I think that's going to be okay as it evens out, right, between the players.
I think, yeah, I mean, it is a level playing field, isn't it? Both of you are going to have to endure exactly the same experience. I think I certainly think it's going to. I agree with you that it's going to be about where the fatigue kicks in. Do you think? I mean, I'm not going to ask you in advance because you're not going to know. But do you think that's likely to influence the order in which you want to play your decks? Ideally, does any thought go
Mm,
into having decks that you feel you're going to be? Because I know I have decks that if I'm on an off day, I feel more comfortable kind of going back onto because I feel like they're a bit more forgiving.
I wouldn't say so. I don't think so. I think once you're in the zone, you're just gonna play your game plan. That's mostly about more matchup oriented, right? I don't think you're gonna slip into that thing where I'm gonna play the convoluted OTK deck first so when I'm still fresh. I don't think so.
That's fair. I'm just curious. I'm interested. I'm hoping that I will be able to convince Bubbles to come and do an interview as well because I think it's going to be really interesting to see the different approaches that people have to this. I mean, I've outright said I don't know how I'd even think about preparing for something like this, but it's exciting. So, I mean, I guess the other question is I sort of think I don't want to let this run too long, so we just want to keep this a little short and snappy
Yeah.
for people to get to know you. But the big one is, I mean, you've done it this far. So what would you sum up your personal experience so far with the King's Cup and what you think it means for cards as kind of a competitive thing, but also from the point of view of the community?
I think it's a really 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 important thing that a big community tournament like that came around again because there hasn't been a lot lately. I mean, you always have the monthly Chinese tournament, which is great, but having something like that, streamed or more of a public display of that is great, and I really do hope it inspires more people to go along with it. And you have the support from 1939, which is greatly appreciated with the giveaways and all that, which is
Oh yeah,
absolutely
massively.
great. Yeah, and I just that's all I can say. I hope well, firstly, I hope alternative formats get a bit more love. We've seen, I think, that people do enjoy them a lot when they're presented to you like that. So I'm hoping that other creators and 1939 themselves will take note of that, and we get a classic ladder or something soon, or a proper tournament stuff. They have the tournament structure in place.
Yeah,
I
it'd
feel
be
like
amazing.
they have a lot of yeah. I feel like they have a lot of opportunities to go into it. Obviously, I know they're not gonna make millions off of making proper tournaments in their client, right? But I do hope the alternative formats get a bit more love in the future from this.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I think it would be amazing to see more and more people trying out alternate deck building and doing things differently. And I mean, up until now, we've seen bits and parts of it. We've seen the occasional, like as you say, tournament that pops up that's Pauper quietly in the background, or some lunatic decides to stream their way to Field Marshal as a Pauper. But in the grand scheme of things, I do. I think it's been, I hope, engaging for everyone. I've been hyper engaged casting it for sure, and I think we've seen very high quality play. which I do want to take a moment, like while we've got you here,
Yeah.
to say that I think it is appreciated the level to which you guys do play is truly exceptional, and you guys can occasionally make it hard work for a caster too, because it's it's intense watching the depth and consideration of it. And obviously, you know, that there are moments where we will call out misplays because we happen to be sat in a caster booth where we can chill out, but obviously you have the pressure of it. But how do you feel? So I've got to ask the question because everybody's going to tell me that if I didn't, I've missed the ultimate opportunity. How do you feel about the finals? Do you believe you've got this? Do you believe you can bring back, after obviously what was a relatively rough set against Bubbles? How does that affect you, or what are your feelings basically going into this best of 9?
Yeah, I don't think losing the last game really matters to me. I've played against Bubbles so much, right? Like, you play against all these people so much anyway, and you know it can go this or that way depending on the day. I think I'm generally a player who just plays his own game. I mean, you see it with the decks, right? Like the unitless decks, the OTK decks. It's just something I really enjoy working on my game plan and making that work. So I really don't. It doesn't really matter that much to me who I play against. It's a bit funny because people always complain about solitaire kind of play styles with decks, but it's what I'm all about. And I think it actually kind of helps in situations like that psychologically, right? Like, I just want to play I just want to play beautiful decks, you know, and even if I win or lose.
There's
this quote that I gotta say that there's this one quote from ancient Japan that even in death, samurai's cheeks gotta be flushed like cherry blossoms, you know. That's how I play cards.
I love
even
that.
if you lose, you gotta play you gotta play beautiful. That's what it's about.
See, I love that. I think that summarizes your approach beautifully from all of the time I've known you. So I am aware that it is later for me, which means it's getting even later for you, and you're at the end of a working day. So we are going to wrap up, but I am going to give you the opportunity before we actually fully wrap up for like any commentary or things that you feel like you want to say, promotions, stuff like that. Let people know whether there's anything that you want to get out there, and then we'll wrap up, and I shall thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Thanks to Team Heavy, obviously. Check out our YouTube channel, and thanks to Jaking for organizing the tournament. It's been great fun so far. Really nice opportunity to get into the game again. So yeah, that's that.
Beautiful. So, he's Baron von Glower. I'm that random bear bloke. This has been just a fun chat, which hopefully everyone will enjoy. As ever, if you enjoy the content, please do follow me, like, subscribe, all of that gubbins. God, I hate saying that, but that's life. I will put all the links down below to Team Heavy, to J King's Cup list, to everything else. Obviously, you can join my Discord and reach out and ask that way. Again, thank you, Baron von Glower, for taking the time to be with us. Thank you all
Thank you for inviting me.
Anytime. I love Team Heavy. I will say it openly because it has been asked before. I am associated with Team Heavy while I do not play competitively. I have done testing with them. I do my best not to have a bias. I'm also stretched because Bubbles is my fellow Brit, but we hugely appreciate the chance to hear people's thoughts, and we will be back with the next one. As ever, stay well, be good human beings, and I will catch you next time.